Hey, what is up? It is Tuesday, February 27th. I am the Dharma guy. You are watching the Dharma time, excuse me. I feel like I'm out of practice. It's been, I don't know, 2 weeks now. And
You'll get right into it.
right? And you are hopefully listening to us right now on WPSN99.com, the World Problem Solving Network, streaming solutions. I had to get that out there. So for those of you who religiously watch me, thank you very much. I appreciate your viewership. But you might have noticed I was not live last week, and that's because our fearless producer over here was sick, as he's still over here coughing his lungs up. Although I have to give him his respect, I guess, sort of. He survived the flu, so he didn't die, everybody. So thank you for not dying, Louis. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But he's feeling well enough that we can proceed today as intended, and I think we got a doozy for you today. I'm really excited for it. Let me get the house cleaning out of the way really quickly so we can go ahead and jump straight into it, because I think it's going to be a long one and hopefully not too offensive to some people. We'll see. I think the sponsors, we got Journey Pure. Always a fantastic sponsor. Love being teamed up with them. We also got Retreat Premier Addiction Treatment Centers, another fantastic group of people who are good at what they do. You got Orange County here in Florida. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. And then, of course, the Now Matters More Foundation, which I'm the president, and the Dope Doctor here is the founder. Speaking of which, a couple events coming up. Tomorrow, myself and Louie will be at the UCF. Let me make sure I get this right. The UCF Public Service Conference at the Key West Ballroom, and that's going to be from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. That's going to be a long day, man. We're going to be manning a table for the foundation, and then I myself will be on the panel at, I believe it's like 11 or 11:15. Once again, that's at the UCF Public Service Conference at the Key West Ballroom. Next one is March 19th, the Now Matters More 5th annual, I think it is this year. The 5th annual golf tournament. You can check more on that at nowgolftournament.org. I believe we have one foursome that dropped out, so we have 4 spots left. If you're local and you're a golfer, I promise you will not regret coming to that. And if you're not a golfer and you just want to support the foundation, feel free to go to nowmattersmore.org, and you can donate there, which we will put to good use. And then, of course, following me, you have Recovery Radio. Pretty good. It's Steve Moderano, great interviewer. Probably one of the best I've ever heard. He comes on after my show every day. Be sure to check that out as well. Now, getting to business. Let's get ready for this. All right, so today we're going to talk about compassion. I know last week I promoted it a little bit, and I talked about what the compassion, what it means and what the show's going to be about. And then, of course, Louis got sick, so therefore I had to postpone it. And I'm kind of glad I did, actually, because it gave me a week to, do some more research, I guess, and have some more interesting conversations and perspectives, points of views. But the main reason why I started the mindset of trying to do a show on compassion is because of the shooting that happened in Parkland, Florida. For those of you who don't realize, we are in Florida. We're on New Smyrna Beach, Florida. And we're, a couple hours, probably 2-3 hours north of where the shooting took place. But, it affects all of us, of course. And I don't know. I saw the shooting. I saw what happened all over the news. And, I saw just this rash of postings on Facebook and so on and so forth. And everybody was talking about it. And I decided to put a poll up. And my poll question, for those of you who didn't see it, was, does the shooter deserve compassion? And as expected, the large majority said no. I had quite a few to say yes, which I thought was kind of cool. But I don't know. I just felt the need to talk about it, so that's what we're going to do today. Starting in my own home, my son, he's 17. He'll be 18 in March 10th, a couple weeks. I talked to him briefly about it. He is in high school, so he's closer to the age of the individuals that were directly impacted by it. And, he had some very, very passionate opinions on it. And he agreed with the sentiment of that person does not deserve compassion. And then my daughter, 13 years old, she's at a charter school, and she decided to be like a little miniature Rosa Parks, and got with some of her friends, and they decided to hold their very own little protest, in in line, I guess, with a lot of the thinking that's taking place. I believe there's like a nationwide protest coming up on March 14th to support the kids and the everything that took place with that. Um, so the thing that I found most interesting, to be honest with you, with my poll question was I just simply asked, does this person deserve compassion? And by person, I'm talking about the shooter. And everybody was you know they were good sports in participating, of course. And so if everybody did, I thank you very much for offering your insight and for taking a vote. Um, but there was some definite emotional responses coming out from everybody, and what I found most interesting was I never even said what compassion looks like or doesn't look like. I merely just said, does this person deserve compassion? And um, for me, I think compassion. The thing we have to keep in mind. I got a little cheat sheet here, man, because it's a big topic today. So I want to make sure I cover and do everything justice, I guess. So bear with me for a second. I think all compassion to me really is just making an effort to try to understand the other individual, understand you know their pain and their suffering, what caused them to do what they do. And for that, yes, I think everybody deserves that compassion. Having compassion for somebody doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with what they did. It doesn't mean you support what they did, and it even doesn't mean that you don't think that they should be punished for whatever it is for whatever action that they took, especially if it hurt others. So for myself, for instance, I 100% agree that what he did was atrocious. I think he should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. I think that um, I completely disagree, obviously, with taking a gun into your hand and going and shooting up all your friends at school. However, I do believe he deserves compassion, and I'm gonna get to his specific kind of my theories on, or my thoughts on that as we progress. But I think it's important that this idea of having compassion for people, even when we don't agree with their perspective or their actions, uh, we're all really good at doing that. We do it every day for those of us who have kids, right? Or brothers, sisters, parents, whatever it may be. For right now, I'm talking to the parents out there who can relate to this. For those of us who have children, if something happens, if my son or my daughter, I have four kids, and if any of them did something that I completely disagreed with, I might punish them. I might give them a consequence. I might explain to them why they did, what they did was wrong, or why there was a better way for it or something. But I would always make sure they felt loved afterwards, no matter how much I disagreed with what they did. And to take it to let's just take it to an extreme, just for the sake of conversation, I guess. If your son or daughter, like, I don't know, say they killed the neighbor's cat, right? It's a horrible, atrocious thing. I don't think anybody would approve of that. But would you want your kid to be thrown in jail and die at that point? Probably not. For some of us, we might not even call the authorities. For some of us, we might just try to deal with the situation, figure out what caused our kid to do that, get them some help. But the last thing we would do is call the authorities to get our own child locked up. And so in that sense, we do know what it's like to completely disagree with the actions of somebody, but still have love and compassion for them. Still try to understand what caused them to do what they do. We still get outside of our own perspective and try to understand that of another. And I know perspective is a word that I use a lot here, and that's because I think a lot of things boil down to just that perspective. Um, excuse me. So uh, the problem with perspective is it is so easy for us to get stuck in our own perspective, and instead of getting outside of our perspective, spend a ton of time justifying why we have the perspective that we do have. And I think that's what a lot of people do in many different topics. There was a debate we were having literally right before we went on air. Myself and Louis were talking about kind of one of the things I'm going to mention here, and him and I'll go into further detail, I'm sure, once the cameras go off and once we kind of progress, because I want to stay on topic here. But so the one I was going to get to is uh, the comparison of military and ISIS, right? And I know this is going to be a hot button for a lot of people. And I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail because I have a rest of the show to do. I'm going to just try to point out some perspective. And what I mean by that is an example of how we get stuck in our own perspective and we refuse to get outside of ourselves to see a different perspective. And we justify our perspective, first and foremost, I've seen a ton of people who I know are very anti-murder and anti-death turn around and say that this kid deserves the death penalty or whatever. And so to me, that's kind of like nobody deserves to die. And then the second somebody does something that you're adamantly against, they need to die now. And that's kind of what I mean, right? So talking about the military, and once again, I know this is a sensitive topic, so I'm not going to get into like a tremendous amount of detail because it really is just a very small portion of what I'm trying to get at. But my point being is, you know, we over here we celebrate our military. We're very thankful for them. We even had a gentleman, you know, the American sniper. I don't remember his name at the moment, but it's very celebrated because he had some absurd amount of confirmed kills, and we're all celebratory of that. We've made a movie about it. We all celebrate them, and I'm not going to say that I disagree with what we're fighting for as a country. I'm not going to say I disagree with our mentality. All I'm going to say is I try to do my best to not lose sight of the facts. And the facts are both sides, whether it be us or ISIS or whomever, have a philosophy that they believe in. They believe that what they're doing is right, and they're willing to end somebody's life because of it. And that's all I'm saying is there's not a big difference in that philosophy. We can argue all day long and justify why this person's right or why this person's not right. We can argue the semantics of it, but at the end of the day, a human life was taken based upon a belief system that somebody had. And that's what I'm talking about. So why we sit here and justify all the reasons that we're doing, like, why we give awards to this American sniper, don't get it twisted. There's plenty of our guys who were taken out by one of their snipers. And every single one of us feel bad about that. We do these amazing funerals and all these other things, and we're very sad about that. Well, the other side is doing the same. And we don't know the circumstances by which a lot of these other military individuals were put into that position. Some people, by all means, wanted to just kill Americans, and they joined the military. However, I think there's also not an awful lot of people who either A, weren't given the option to not join, or B, they were indoctrinated from an early age. And so they were led to believe that America's the devil and they're ready to go fight. And so when that takes place and those people die, so when this American sniper was killing all these people, there's families over there who now don't have their child over nothing other than two sides can't agree on how to handle a situation, and they're willing to kill over it. And so that's kind of what I mean as far as getting stuck in our perspective. We get so stuck in our perspective that we forget that there's an opposite perspective. So whatever's true, the opposite is true as well. And that's what we kind of need to keep an eye on when it comes to compassion. The next one I have here is, it's, I guess the other part of what I'm getting at is it's easy for us as Americans or even as people to agree when we're on the winning side. So, back in the civil rights days, it was very easy for a lot of white people to get together and agree that, yeah, we should have segregated schools and segregated this, and yeah, we should run them out. It's very easy to agree on that when you're on the right side of that. Is the way you see it. However, if you're on the wrong side of it, if you're on the losing side of it, it's not so cut and dry anymore. If you're the one that's getting shot, if you're the one that's being oppressed, it doesn't feel that way anymore. And so that's what I mean. If it's true, the opposite is true. And my problem as a society is we're passing that on, because now it's not only just us who spend a lot of our time justifying our stances on things and having compassion for those of us who we genuinely agree with, but we're passing that along in the sense of the next generations coming up. I see in my own house, I have the ones who are most, aware of it would be the 13 and the 17-year-old. I see them. I see her. I hear some of their takes on things, their perspective on things. I get to watch the news, and I get to see, different universities rioting because they don't want somebody to talk. I got to see the Nazi thing that happened in the Carolinas. I got to see tons of that stuff. And while I do my best to not try to pick sides, even though oftentimes there is one side that universally has the moral high ground, of course. However, what I try not to lose sight of is everybody has a voice. And what I see oftentimes is, especially in the youth, of specific demographics, let's say, or specific, niches, if you will, they get upset that they're not being listened to, right? How many times have we heard somebody from the millennial group, somebody from uh, um, the hipster group, the homosexual group, the black group, the white group, the Jew. How many people? How many times have we heard somebody from that group get angry and upset and saying, "Hey, nobody's listening to me. They're not validating my opinion, my perspective. I'm a human too. I have thoughts too. I have emotions too." And yet, I see the opposite true oftentimes in the sense of they fight so hard to be heard, but yet they're unwilling to listen a lot of the times. And like for instance, there was a gentleman. I think I don't even remember his name at the moment. It's not even worth mentioning, but there was a gentleman who was going to have a talk. I think it was at Berkeley, and the people went just crazy. Right? They got up they protested. There was like fires. One of the gentlemen was actually able to speak, but they all like got tickets to sit into the actual stadium and were yelling over the top of him. They weren't giving him the opportunity to even be heard. And the most amazing thing that I took from that was when you heard their explanation as to why, their whole thing was they're so wrong that they're not even allowed a voice. And so I guess my question is, if that's your philosophy on things, which a lot of people have, especially when the Nazi thing came in, right, with the supposed, the alt the was it the alt right, I guess is what they prefer to be called. I think the term Nazi was something that the media and everybody else kind of put on them for a lot of them. But you know, do they not feel the same way? Are we not listening to them? You know, you feel the need to be heard, and I say you because everybody listening to this wants to feel heard, and I think you deserve to be heard whether it's convenient or not, right? Whether I agree with you or not, I still think you have the right to be heard, because first and foremost, I think that's where a lot of the compassion starts to kind of leave. Is it's easy for me to not have compassion for somebody when I don't even listen to your story, when I don't humanize it, when I don't try to understand the plight in life that you've had. I think it's very easy for me to have a lack of compassion. It's very easy for me just to dismiss you and act like you're not a human with rights and thoughts and feelings. And the sad part is that's been happening a lot to various different groups, especially in this country that I know of. And I'm not saying that that's good. It's obviously a horrible thing. However, when that then kind of changes sides, if you will, and they start doing it to everybody else, I'm just under the impression that that's not right either. So, for instance, I read an article, and I'm going to butcher this. I apologize ahead of time, but I got the gist of the article. I read an article where basically they were saying how boys these days have kind of been left in the wind, specifically white boys. And what I mean is, the last, I don't know, 50 years or so, we spent an awful lot of time and money and energy on educating our young girls and making sure that they feel that they could do anything they want to do, women empowerment, things of that nature. We spent an awful lot of time on different minority groups to make sure that they felt included. And we've kind of forgot somewhere in there the young white male. And obviously, there's two sides to that typically. There's one side that says, yeah, that sucks that the white male, the young white boy now, has kind of been left behind because there's not a lot of money spent on educating them and helping them and giving them a voice or teaching them how to interact in this new way of doing things. And then there's the other side of that, which I thought was interesting. On the other side I saw was too bad. That was essentially their response was, well, too bad. You've been doing it to us for years. It's about time you pay. And I guess that's where my problem comes in, is the lack of compassion, right? Where's the compassion there for, like, my son who's 6 years old now? What has he done to anybody? And how is not viewing him as valuable or giving him worth based upon what other older white men have done in the past, how is that any better than all the oppression and everything else that's taking place to all the different groups that are wanting attention at the moment? To me, there is no difference. And we can argue all day long about retribution and things of that nature, but this is where my whole, my philosophy starts to come into play, and that is nobody wins in that instance. It's got to stop somewhere. So why can't we be the agents of change, if you will? Why can't we put a stop to that? Why can't we start having legitimate compassion, especially when it's not convenient? It's really, really easy to have compassion when it's your side, or when you agree with the person, or when you know the person, or when you understand the person. It's so easy to have compassion. I think most people are quite capable of that. But what about when you don't agree with the person? What about when you don't like the person? You know, There's a story. I'm not even sure if it's made up or not. I think it's legit, but we'll just assume it's made up for the sake of this conversation. There was a gentleman who it was a white supremacist guy who hated black people, and he had to have heart surgery, like emergency heart surgery, and the only surgeon available was a black person. Well, what if that black dude didn't have compassion? He's like, well, I don't care. I don't think anybody would look at that and say that that's right. I think we would all put it aside and say he still needs to do his job and save this person. That's compassion, man. There's a part of him that felt compassionate. And, we've done this whole lack of compassion thing. Has it worked? This whole idea of eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, survival of the fittest, and all these other whatever amazing cliches that we can all come up with to make ourselves feel good about it. At the end of the day, is it working? I'm going to say it doesn't. I'm going to say we're having more school shootings than we've ever had before. We're having tons of death. And so we've tried the whole tit for tat thing, and it doesn't work. Whatever happened to love and compassion? Let's try that. Let's give that a shot, right? The one group that I see a lot, and I know Louie and I have talked about this at length, and feel free to chime in on this one because I know you're chipping at the bit for some of it.
I am not yet. I did want to add a quote to what you just said.
All right, go ahead.
You just said that the strongest of the species and all that stuff.
Sure, survival of the fittest.
Yeah, survival of the fittest. But there's actually a quote from Leon C. Megginson that I just read today, actually, which was, "It is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change."
Yeah, I agree. If you don't evolve, you die, man. You got to evolve. And I think that's what happens right now, is we're not, as a species, we're not evolving, we're dying. Both literally and figuratively. Literally, of course, I mean, there's no need to explain that one. But figuratively, we're losing our way, it seems. And the one that the most, not really the most, but there's a specific segment of the population at the moment that I am not completely a part of. I'm guilty at points in my life of, I won't say looking down on, but I will say of not going out of my way to understand that I'm being forced these days to defend because I see how they've become like the butt of a lot of jokes and things of that nature, and it doesn't seem to be a lot of compassion surrounding them. And so once again, I have to practice what I preach. I can't talk about compassion if I'm not going to actually practice it myself. And that would be it's a very specific one, so I'm going to make sure I read this to get it 100% correct here. And that is, where's that? Okay, so the straight, white, male, conservative Christian. Let me say it again. Straight, white, male, conservative Christian. Go ahead. I know this. There you go.
No, that's just a bullseye for everybody right now. It
is.
That's the person that can't say anything right now.
Exactly.
But nobody's feeling sorry for that person for some reason.
No, and that's what I'm talking about. Is that is, and being the fact that I do fit in some of those categories. I am a white male and I'm straight. I am not a Christian, and I am not what some would consider to be conservative. I have both conservative and liberal beliefs, so I guess I'm an independent in the middle there. Having said that, I've been the recipient of a lot of the whole anti-white stuff sometimes. I remember a very distinct conversation one time. There was this girl we were talking to, and she was on the phone with somebody, and she was trying to describe me to the person she was on the phone with, because I came up, I started saying something. I wasn't aware that she was on the phone, and she tried to tell her friend on the phone who this person was that she was hearing, and she said, oh, he's a white boy, which, first of all, I've always hated the term white boy. I'm a grown man. I haven't been a boy since I was a little one, so please don't call me that. However, she said it was a white boy, and I couldn't hear what the other person said over the phone, but I heard her response to it, and her response to it was, oh, no, he's cool. And I was like, and my immediate thoughts were like, what? What about, so she was basing my quote-unquote coolness on the simple fact if I was white or not. And that was back then. That was like 10, 15 years ago, and it's worse now. Nowadays, if you are a straight, white, male, conservative Christian, think Mike Pence, right? Like, think our vice president.
You went there.
Yeah. Just think something like that, right? You are the laughingstock now. Like, you're the one person that it's okay for everybody to make fun of. As a white person, we're not allowed to crack on somebody for their race. I mean, I do it all the time with my buddies, but the people who are in positions of authority or power or media attention, you're not allowed to say anything about any of those things. You can't joke on anybody's religion anymore. You can't say anything. There's tons of rules and regulations of what you can and can't say. But there's one group that everybody's allowed to make fun of, and that's a straight white male conservative Christian. And the weird part about it is,
and you can add Southern to that. Actually, you can add the Southern accent,
if you got some
because
twang to it,
you're allowed
stupid.
to put a Southern accent on it and really make fun. And for some reason, that's completely allowed.
Well, that hits home for you because your wife is from Kentucky, even though she doesn't have the twang.
Well, she has family in Kentucky.
that does.
She's not from Kentucky. But she has family in Kentucky. Yeah, and so every time someone uses that draw, as if to indicate a lack of intelligence, lack of intelligence or arrogance, or ignorance, they use that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, and once again, I don't identify.
Did your son just laugh at me?
He did, actually. That is his laugh.
Yeah.
I don't prescribe to those specific belief systems, and once again, the conservative Christian aspect of that, I myself have been guilty in the past of probably just being a little bit more critical than I probably should have been, because being an atheist, there's always that age-old debate between atheists and religious individuals that's just never going to die down, and then the conservative aspect, the stereotypical, white Republican who's, the devil now. They got all the money and they're the reason why everything sucks nowadays. And so without getting into the belief system, right, because that's teach their own. All I'm getting at is the compassion aspect. Those people are human beings as well. And oftentimes we consider it okay to crack on them and okay to make jokes about them or to stereotype them, to put them down and things of that nature. But let's not get it twisted. They're human beings as well, right? They're actual living human beings. And most of the things that we have problems with, none of them did, right? And like, to use an example, the white guilt thing that's out there at the moment, where a lot of people expect me to feel a certain amount of guilt just for my white privilege, as they call it. I wasn't a part of slavery, guys. Like, I didn't do it. Nobody I know did it. And so I shouldn't feel the need to make up for something that happened, 100 years before I was even a gleam in my daddy's eye, right? And I'm not saying that I don't empathize, and I'm not saying it's not wrong or whatever. All I'm saying is this concept that we're just constantly yelling and blaming and getting angry at everybody else and drawing these lines in the sand, that is the opposite of compassion, and look at where it's getting us. It's not working. It's making it worse for everybody, right? And that kind of goes into this whole idea of I'm taking care of me and mine, right? And I remember when I was doing groups a lot more frequently, I guess, in the treatment facilities. When I would talk about this particular topic and compassion, it would always come up where people would say, "Look, I don't have time to worry about everybody else. I'm gonna worry about me and my kids and my family, and that's it. Screw everybody else." Well, I guess my question is, if even by doing this show, right? Let's say if I do this show for long enough and I'm able to somehow, some way be the catalyst of happiness in, let's say, 10 people. I'm not going to be, crazy. Just 10 people. So for whatever reason, 10 people listen to the show over the years and they're able to find happiness through something that I was able to say. Is that not 10 people now? 10 people fewer bringing anger and resentment and everything else into the world that my children now have to grow up in? So how is helping other people not actually helping myself? And that's where the compassion for ourselves comes into play, right? I'm getting a little off topic here, but oh well, I'm rolling with it. And that is, we do great at doing compassion. Oftentimes for people that we understand, we're not so great at people we don't understand. But there's one demographic. There's one. I don't want to give it away yet because I want to ask him and see if he gets it. There's one segment that we are the worst at compassion. So we're great at giving compassion to people around us that we love and care about and understand. We're not so great about giving it to people we don't agree with or we don't understand. But who's the worst at getting compassion from us? You got a guess, Louis?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Who's the worst at getting the compassion?
Yeah, who are we the worst at giving the compassion to? So who's the last person to get it? I put you on the spot. Maybe.
No. First, I would say myself.
That's what it is.
Because
that's the answer.
Okay, because I'm my worst critic.
We all are.
Okay.
And so that's the answer. And I'm not surprised you got it.
I'm smarter than you thought.
No, I knew you'd get it. Right? Anyways, no, that's the thing is we can search this entire world and we'll never find anybody more deserving of our love and compassion than ourselves. Problem is, we don't give it to ourselves. And having compassion for others is sort of having compassion for yourself. It feels good. to genuinely care and love another human being, right? And I do have some homework, and I'm gonna give it to you guys later. Actually, I don't want to see. I'm getting off topic, man. That's why I have it written down, and I still don't follow it. Gosh.
By the way, Marissa's making a lot of comments on here.
Is she?
Did you want to see any of the comments here?
I'll pull it up here.
Okay.
I'll pull
because
it up here.
She's saying something about the Ben Watson situation, and Brian Luttrell, I guess, from the Backstreet Boys, is getting a lot of hate
Okay.
because defending Ben Watson. I'm not really familiar with the situation.
I'm
I
not
don't know if
familiar
you
with
were.
any of it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
but,
I think I saw a posting about it or something.
Yeah, apparently Brian Luttrell defended Ben Watson for saying taking faith out of the equation, people suffer. And it's on his Instagram. So apparently there's a lot of hate going back and forth. But she was just bringing that up. She says she's getting it. So she's listening.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And as this is pulling up, I'll keep talking. And Marissa, if I don't get a chance to do it online, as this is taking a little while, I promise you I will comment later. But that's what I mean about compassion, man. It's such a divisive thing, right? So let's go ahead and get straight into the divisiveness. There's two people in my mind right now that I can think of that, at least locally, are going to get the least amount of compassion. The first one is the school shooter. And that's why I asked the question. That's what started this whole thing, right? And when I asked the poll, there was a lot of emotional responses to it, right? There's some people who, were mentioning torture and stuff. There were some people saying throw away the key. Once again, I didn't mention what compassion looks like. I just said the word compassion. I never said he should get away with it. I never said he shouldn't get punished. But compassion to me is understanding. And so what I mean by compassion for this kid, the reason why, the type of compassion that I think this kid deserves is simply everybody listening to this right now, hopefully anyways, for the most part, can't comprehend the idea that you would wake up tomorrow and think the only solution to your problems is to go get a gun, show up to your school, your place of business, and shoot everybody in it. For the most part, I like to think that everybody who's listening to me could not even fathom a situation where that's a possibility. He did. And so you got to ask yourself, what has happened in this kid's life? How many people have failed him along the way that little boy that had that pain and everything else grew up to be the 19-year-old who thought that was the only option? So I got to make sure I'm not agreeing with it. I think it was horrible. I think he should be punished, and I think he should be held accountable. However, I think there's some accountability to go around. We as a society, when I hear at 19, and especially some of the red flags, and I don't know all the details, I've heard mixed reports and stuff, and to me, it's not important. It's a secondary issue. To me, the first thing I think of is how many people have failed that kid. How many people failed to see the hurt and the pain and help him address it in a way that doesn't make him grow up to think that that's the only solution to a problem. And for me, it took me a long time to get to this point. I'm saying it like it's an easy thing to do. And let me tell you, it's not. And I know there's one person right now I know that's going to listen to this. If it's not live, they're going to watch it later. And they were directly impacted by this particular situation. And I think she's going to have a very hard time, her and her family, giving compassion, because you don't want to hear that when you're dealing with the loss of somebody. However, it's possible, right? And it's possible when we get outside of ourselves and we try to think from a different perspective. When we start to realize that hurt people, and it's not a convenient thing to think of, but it's legit and it's true. And I think that, there was an example one time, there was here in Florida, good old Florida, man. It's the heat, I think, man. The heat just makes people pissed off. Anyways, there was a time, and I don't remember how long ago it was now, but there was a story, and there's a video going around Facebook where there was these two guys and they were in a Publix and they were fighting. Two middle-aged, I think they were both white actually. They were both fighting in the sub line, probably because the subs are so good. But anyways, so they were fighting, and it turns out that apparently the one of the guys' wife is pregnant, and something was said outside the store or whatever it may be. I don't know all the exact details. My point being though is there was a point in my life prior to getting to this philosophy and prior to finding my own peace and my own happiness that I would have immediately watched that, much like everybody else, and I would have immediately picked sides. I would have immediately said, what are the details? Who did what? Oh, that's wrong. Absolutely, they should have gotten that, right? That's where my mind would have taken me. And that wasn't the compassionate approach. That was the judgmental approach. So now where I'm at in my life, what I aim to do, and I like to think that I'm pretty good at doing it, but I'm I'm like everybody else. I'm human, but my main path is set up now to where when I watch a video like that, my first instinct isn't to pick sides. My first instinct is to think, wow, what are those people dealing with that it's spilling out on everybody around them? You know, if somebody were to walk up to me in the past and start cussing me out or give me a dirty look or whatever it may be, I probably would have hit them. No doubt about it. I would have hit them and we would have been going at it. Where I'm at now in my life, thanks to compassion, is if somebody would get up and start flipping out, whether I know this person or not, my first thought wouldn't be, oh, who the hell are you? My first thought is, wow, how bad of a day have you had? What is going on? What is life doing to you right now that you feel anyways life is doing to you that you feel that this is the only way to respond to what's happening? That's my first thought. And that to me is compassion. So with this kid, with the shooter, you know, I can't imagine that. Because to me, it's such a foreign idea. There's no way I'd want to just go shoot anybody for this matter. But to think that there's a series of events that could happen in this little boy's life, because he was a little boy, and I don't think anybody at like 6 years old, when you ask him, what do you want to do when you're 19? I want to go shoot. Nobody thinks that, right? He had his own wants and hopes and dreams and his own thoughts. Something happened along the way, and I'm not saying it was young. I don't know what day it was, but a series of events where people let him down and failed him led to the point where he was dealing with so much hurt and so much pain and so much trauma. He didn't know what to do with any of it, and he released it out and spilled out onto everybody around him. And to me, that is the problem where we're at right now. It's not the guns. It's not the gun control. It's we are a society that does not have coping skills. We are a society that values tit for tat over love. We start to think better them than me. I'm going to take care of my own. You deserve this, and how dare you? And then we start coming up with all these outlier, positions where, well, this person dealt with stuff, and then they didn't go off, and we all deal with things differently. But it doesn't make me better or worse than you, because there's plenty of things in my life that I've done that I guarantee you I've hurt somebody that they probably don't care what my reasoning was. They just were hurt by it. And so I think that's where the love and the compassion has to start to come into play. And once again, we're all really good at doing that when it comes to our children, our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our uncles, our mothers, our fathers, our animals. We're good at those things that we're directly connected to and separating the actor from the action. Something takes place, we don't immediately condemn them. We don't immediately say, how could you? I can't believe you, whatever. No, we look at them out of love and we think, wow, this sucks. Let's deal with it. And for like my children, for instance, when my children do something, there's a consequence attached to it because I'm trying to teach them cause and effect. I'm trying to teach them accountability and responsibility and all these other abilities. I'm trying to teach them all those. But at the same token, I always make sure they feel loved afterwards. I always make sure they understand I love you, but I don't like the behavior and we have to correct it. Not a big deal. There's a consequence. We'll do it, but I still love you. And we're all good at doing that. But we got to get so much better at doing it in things that we don't agree with, that we don't necessarily care about per se. We have to start realizing that we're all together. We're all in this together. We're all doing our best and we're all failing miserably. Nobody has the key to happiness, man. Nobody has the answer. We all think that we do, and we're all going at it the best way we can. And a lot of us are failing. And so we have to keep that in mind when we're dealing with individuals.
I want a cheat day.
And cheat day, you just be an asshole to everybody.
I just want a cheat day. I'm nice all the time. I feel like, and so I need a cheat day.
You are
just
nice
like
all the time.
just like when people that
even when you had a flu, you were nice.
Yeah, people that are exercising, right? You get to have a cheat day where you eat whatever you want, right? I know you don't do that. You say just watch your numbers all the time.
Exactly.
I know, but the people that say you can have a cheat day.
Sure.
I want a cheat day for compassion. Or can you be compassionate and reactionary? Can those two exist together, or do you not think those two can exist?
I would say no. Those are mutually exclusive. Meaning, compassion to me is more of a response as opposed to reaction.
That's what I'm saying. So you don't think that compassion and reaction can ever exist simultaneously? In other words, I have to set aside compassion for a second, slap the crap out of you, and then go back to being compassionate.
And then feel bad that you slapped them. Yeah,
I'll take that then.
Sure.
I'll take that.
No, I think that and I've learned this the hard way, and that is reactions are inherently not compassionate. As human beings, we are programmed to avoid anything that we don't like and crave things that we do like, and we try to do our best to make sure that our entire day fits in that little box. And when it doesn't, we get very upset with that. And so inherently, our human response as a reaction is going to not be compassionate, because our response is going to be coming from a selfish perspective.
Right. I try to be more responsive, but like I said, sometimes I feel like I need a cheat
of course. All right, dude, we're not perfect. Let me ask my wife, man. She'll tell you. I'm not perfect.
It's not only that I'm not perfect, I just don't have the desire to be perfect. So that's what makes it worse, story. Trinity. You know what?
It's a whole nother story.
When I eat tofu and yoga and that's all I do,
see, I don't do either one.
Then I'll go as far as
we got a couch, man. If you want to lay down and tell me all about it, man.
No, I'm going to turn this off now.
There you go. And so the other person, right? And this one is I haven't talked about this one yet, actually, and so I'm curious as to see any feedback that happens, because I think this right now, hands down, is public enemy number one. Believe it or not, I haven't seen anybody take the stance that I'm about to take right now legitimately. I've seen people joke about it, but I haven't seen anybody legitimately take the stance. All right, so for those of you who don't live locally or who haven't been really paying attention to the story with the school shooting, there is one individual who was attached to this who is public enemy number one, and that would be the deputy that was outside. The deputy that was outside. So kind of some background here. A huge debate right now. And the reason why it's so publicly, debated at the moment is because for a lot of people, they feel that the only solution is to arm more people. More people armed would result in less people getting shot. And so, of course, the people who are against that stance are using this as an example to say, well, wait a minute, here's somebody who was trained, whose job was to essentially protect everybody, who was armed, and he didn't go inside. And I think I heard this morning, I believe it was like 4 minutes that he sat there and did absolutely nothing, even though he knew what was going on. And I think he has since resigned. I think I remember somebody telling me he was even almost to the age of retirement, that kind of stuff. He's been on the force for a while. And so, once again, coming from a compassionate place, my first thought was, wow, that sucks. It was actually my first thought, to be honest with you. It was like, damn, that sucks. But then I started thinking to myself, like, okay, logically, do I think that it sucks that he didn't know that about himself until the moment of when it was called for the most? Do I think that sucks? Yes. Do I think that he should have been more self-aware up to that point? Absolutely. However, and let's just be honest with one another, right? I'm looking right at you in the camera, right? For those of you watching this, just you and me talking. Let's just be 100% honest. If you were standing outside and you have a family to go home to, regardless of what your job title is, there's somebody in there with what you think to be an assault rifle just mowing people down. Are you running in there without thinking first? I wouldn't. Gonna be honest with you. My first thought would be to hold up. I would wait for backup. I would do whatever because I don't want to die. Self-survival, right? And there's some people who would run in head first, and there were some people who wouldn't run in, guns blazing. I'm not going to judge somebody for that because I can't honestly say, we could sit here as a John Wayne society, talk about, I would go in. Nobody really knows what they would do in that situation until you're approached with it. When you're sitting there and you hear the gunfire, you hear the screams, and you got to run in there and put yourself in harm's way, essentially. I'm not saying, of course, I would love to think that our officers would just suit up and do what they've been trained to do and handle business. But at the end of the day, he's a real human being. And put myself in that situation, I don't know what I would do.
So that's factual. I agree with that. I don't mean to step in here, but
go for it, man.
But when you say that you wouldn't, first of all, I'm not so sure that's okay. The I don't know part is
I wouldn't
what was missing there because
I wouldn't react that way.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, what I'm getting at is I would think about it. I wouldn't just hear it and go running. I would stop like, wait a minute.
So here's the issue. And I haven't looked into the guy, and I don't know that
his
training. I don't know his training.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I do know enough from being in a military family what my father's training apparently was.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you that I kind of think that most law enforcement kind of go through the same kind of training, which is you train to be not in your thoughts, but in your instinct.
Yeah.
And so you if you do enough training, things become very instinctual, like a boxer. A boxer's not thinking. The only time they're thinking is when they go into the corner and their corner man is telling them stuff. Then they're thinking. However, once they go back out there, if you realize, as soon as they get hit once, they go back to what they were doing in the first place, no matter what their trainer was saying, because they go back to their instincts.
It's Mike Tyson. You always have a plan until you get hit in the face.
Exactly. So if your instinct, and I like what you said when you said, it's not what he thought how he was going to react or whatever. But what I would hope is that anybody that would ever take a law enforcement position, especially one of that importance, I hope you would train enough to bypass any of your thoughts.
Sure.
Because you should never have a gun on your hip if your concern is, if you're going to be thinking about your family at home before you think about why you have that gun on your hip.
No, absolutely.
Because once you put a gun on your hip, that is exactly the responsibility you take.
Well, you're held to a higher standard
and
at that
so,
point.
Exactly. And so I think that's why you hear the lack of compassion from people in regards to this, which is Marissa's no different. She's saying that she has less compassion for the deputy than for the shooter.
Oh, okay.
Which makes sense because at that point, that person put themselves.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree
in
the
that
sense
position.
that I would have liked to have seen certain things. But if I'm going to be honest and I'm going to stick to my philosophy, because once again, that's the whole thing about spirituality, guys, is you can't cherry pick. You can't do it when it's convenient, when it makes you feel good. You got to do it in situations where you don't necessarily feel good as well. And that to me is the true calling of the spiritual lifestyle. And so if I'm being true to my spirituality, I have to stop and say, well, wait a minute. He's still a human being. Like he's not this perfect little robot that we would like for him to be. He's still a human. And so I'm not going to condemn somebody for having a second thought when there's somebody in there. It's essentially a war zone. Like I'm not gonna condemn that person. Do I wish it would have gone differently? Yes. Do I think that needs to be addressed moving forward, and maybe putting multiple people there, or maybe having backup a little bit closer, or having a differently trained individual? Yes, I think that needs to be addressed. What the answer is, I don't know. That's why I don't get paid to make those decisions.
What do you mean by condemn when you say you would not condemn him? So what emotion or what feeling or what thoughts do you have towards an individual who puts themselves in a job to save your children? Because you have kids.
Yes.
They put themselves in a position and get paid for, like you said, almost 20 years to defend children.
Mm-hmm.
Then when do you hold them accountable to the point where you say, I will condemn you if you do not do your job? What does it take then?
I think condemning is more of an emotional perspective. So do I think that he should have been he did resign. So do I think that he should have stayed on the force? No. Like I think you.
Okay, so you do think he should have resigned?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe in consequences to actions, and I believe accountability. And that's where I think a lot of people kind of, especially during my poll, man, you should have seen some stuff in the poll. I have to show it to you later. But I think that's, once again, people confuse compassion with acceptance. Like, I agree with what you do. You can disagree. Like, I disagree with the shooter for sure. I disagree with the fact that you're a cop, dude. Like, what are you doing? That's your whole job. You put on your gun and badge that day knowing that if something happens, it's my job to go in and intercede here. Correct. And make it right. And so you failed at that. And if you failed to uphold your duties as an officer, there needs to be a consequence, right? If I fail to do if I fail to follow the speed limit, I expect a speeding ticket.
So what's an example of condemning then? What are people doing that you're saying?
They're trash. A lot of people are trashing him as a person. And they're condemning him as a human being by saying that, like he's a bad person. How dare he? They're just it's no longer about the failure to act as an officer. They're talking about who they're trying to put themselves in his position as a human being, and they're not taking into account the fact that he's still human. Like they're not taking into account the fact that we all like to think that we're these little John Wayne, Chuck Norris dudes that when something happens, I'm running in.
Which we know most people aren't.
But you're not.
Because we've seen those videos and we've seen those that show what would you do.
Statistically speaking, you're going to freeze up and you're going to sit there and you're going to do nothing.
Most people do.
And so we forget that he's still a human being. So yes, I have compassion for even that dude, because not only that, once again, let's walk down this path for a second. Let's put ourselves in his shoes. You thought one way of yourself. You thought that you were that person. Now you wake up every day realizing that a couple things. You're not that person you thought you were. That's got to be a hard thing. Think, he's old too, like older, I should say. I don't know his exact age, but if he's been on the force for like 20 years, he's got to be at least 40. So let's assume for the sake of conversation that that's how old he is. So the person you thought you were for 40 years, 20 years on the force, you wake up one day and realize I'm not that person. And you didn't find out conveniently through like an argument with somebody. You found out when 17 children lost their lives. That's the second thing now you got to wake up. You got to wake up every day and realize for the rest of your life, you got to wake up and realize in an indirect way, I'm responsible for 17 people dying. Now, we all know that he's not responsible, but that doesn't change the fact that that's what he's going to tell himself. That doesn't change the fact that that's what he's hearing on the news. That doesn't change the fact that possibly his own family might look at him that way. Like, there's no telling what this dude's going to have to wake up and deal with every single day. It's like the Richard Jewell guy, right? Remember him with the Atlanta, the bombing that took place in Atlanta, where everybody thought it was this Richard Jewell, and then he found out afterwards it wasn't, and his life was destroyed. Well, this dude's life is essentially destroyed. Like, he's going to have to do a lot of introspective work to bounce back from this and live a happy and productive life from this point forward. Because you not only found out that you weren't who you thought you were, but now you're going to have to deal with the fact that in your mind and a lot of other people's minds, you're responsible for 17 people dying. That's a huge thing to wake up with every day.
In your opinion, is he responsible for any of the death whatsoever?
No, he didn't pull the trigger, man.
So, in your opinion, if I am defending you, I am never responsible for the shots coming at us. Only so if I save you, then what is that?
It's great if you save me. Thanks.
I know, but am I saving you from dying? In other words, if I am protecting you, if I'm your bodyguard, and people are trying to get you and you live, so is there anything at all that I did, or is that all the shooter?
Well, I mean, I guess I could go both ways on that one. I know where you're trying to get at. So to stay on point with the cop, no, I don't think it's his I don't think it's his fault that they died, because I think that's expecting a lot.
Correct.
And
I agree with that.
Even the people that I know that are in law enforcement, your training technically says wait for backup and assess the situation.
I agree with that.
And so I don't know the details, so I'm not sure if he didn't follow protocol 2 and 10. I don't know. But so if you were to save one, I think it's fantastic. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's. I don't think.
And he may have. We don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
We don't know the whole story.
I don't.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't blame.
Right.
I hear what you're saying, but I think a lot of people are saying if there was any possibility of being less than 17 because of that, whether it be a distraction, whether it be, hey, look it over here, and whatever. I mean, it could have been
to me that's
a
million
lot of
conjecture.
We don't know. We just don't know. But you know that there's a lot of emotion, and you picked things that had a lot of emotion attached to them on purpose.
I did.
Okay, so I'm just trying to, as an audience,
sure.
Where do we go with that then? How does this make more sense in our lives when we go back to our lives? Because we're not in the shooting,
right?
Like I'm not in that shooting. So what are you telling me? Something that I can use in my life over here?
I'm telling you to aim for more compassion. I'm telling you to start to get outside your own perspective, which is what my 3 tips were in the back.
You better get to it then.
Oh yeah, we are. Oh my God, dude.
There you go. I'm sorry.
That's why. All right. All right, so on that note, because we are running out of time. See, man, and I had this whole page, and I knew today was going to run long.
You're going to have to do a part 2. You brought up a big doozy of a topic.
I know. And you and I have our debate to finish, too, afterwards, by the way, that we started prior to the show. But anyways. So
our debate is different than what you've said today.
I know.
So far.
I know. But anyways, all right, so the 3 things, right? So at the end of each show, I do my best to try to give you 3 actual, actionable things to do, right? Because at the end of the day, why are we listening to this? And my hope is people are listening to this to try to achieve, some enlightenment, achieve a little bit closer to happiness and peace and things of that nature, right? And so the 3 things I'm going to give you after this show, number 1 is you have to understand that everybody has a story. You have to understand that not everybody has your perspective and your belief system and your way of doing things, and that's okay. You have to get outside yourself. You have to do your best to try to understand that everybody else has a story. And it's so hard to be angry at somebody whose story you know. If somebody cuts you off or somebody's mean to you at the store, it's easy to be like, oh, they're mean, what's wrong with you? But if you found out that person lost their job and their dog and their wife left them and all these other things, suddenly you're not so upset anymore that they were kind of rude to you at a store. And that's what I mean, is to understand that we're all kind of dealing with our own little skeletons. We're all dealing with our own little things, and you're no different than any of them. The second one is listen, but listen to understand. Too many times we listen to other people, and I see this all the time, especially now in today's climate. We listen to hear things that we don't agree with and how we're going to respond. In other words, I think it was you actually. I steal it now. Is you're
on pause?
Yeah, instead of being on pause, being record or whatever. We oftentimes listen, but we're not really listening. We're hearing you, but what we're doing is we're waiting for our turn to talk. What it was is in the first 12 seconds of you speaking, I heard something I disagreed with. And so the rest of the time you're talking, all I'm trying to do is wait till you to shut up so I can feel comfortable enough to blast you for what I just disagreed with. And that is the opposite of compassion. Listen to understand. Really try to empathize with where the other person's coming from. You don't have to agree with it to understand it, guys. I don't know what it's like to have kids, but I can understand it. I don't know what it's like to do that, but I get it. It's probably painful, and probably, there's all sorts of other good and bad things associated with it. My point being, listening to understand doesn't mean you agree. You're just listening to understand. You have to kind of empathize and get where that person's trying to get you to understand. And then the third one is love yourself. and loving yourself is number one. Being there for others as well, being of service. That definitely does give us a sense of joy and peace. And then the way you can practice that is that self-talk. So, for instance, none of us would, if a little kid or someone we loved and cared about came to us and says, "I'm so stupid, I'm an idiot, I can't believe I did this. Oh, what's wrong with me?" Most likely we wouldn't tell that person, "Yeah, you're right, you're an idiot, you're so stupid, what's wrong?" We wouldn't say that to them because we know that's ineffective, we know that's bad, we know that's not going to do anything positive. And yet we do it to ourselves all the time. We say to ourselves, "Oh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe." Stop. Stop trying to motivate yourself in ways that you would never motivate anybody else. So that would be your homework, is start motivating yourself in ways that you would that little kid, that little loved one. So that would be the 3 tips, guys. We are running out of time. That was my pseudo wrap up there. And yeah, I think we should
definitely need a part 2.
Need a part 2 somehow.
You can do it.
I believe in myself. Anyways, until next time, now that you know better, be better. Peace.
Do you think he plans it all out? Or just makes it up as he goes along?